Hello, everybody. Welcome to our first ever video presentation here at howtolicenseyourmusic.com. I'm speaking with Gary Gray today, who I'm sure most of you are familiar with at this point. Gary is my producer. He's based in LA. We've collaborated on several courses together. And Gary and I are going to do something a little bit different today. Gary and I, I'm actually going to have Gary interview me. I thought it would be fun to have somebody interview me. And we're going to talk about how to license your music in TV and films. We are going to mention our course that we're offering at the end of this presentation. I'll just tell you that right at the outset of this. But my goal with this presentation is to give you so much value that by the end of this, whether or not you take the course or not, you'll be much better prepared to start licensing your own music. With that said, Gary, how are you?
I'm good, Aaron. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm a little
Awesome.
nervous. This is the first time we've done this on video, and it's a little different than doing the audio, but I'm ready to go if you are.
Yeah, this is your foray into the television world.
Yeah. Well, actually, I guess it's not the first video. We do have a video course coming out that we actually recorded the video for last year, but this is my first sort of video presentation for the website. So this should be a lot of fun. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to turn it over to you, Gary, and I've given you a list of questions to ask me, and you've come up with a couple of your own as well, I know. So, Gary, take it away.
Okay. So I know we've known each other for about 5 years now.
Has it been that long? I was talking about you the other day, and I'm like, I've known Gary for, I was sure it was at least 3 years, but I didn't realize it's been 5. Wow, time flies.
Yeah, that's when I first hooked up with howtolicenseyourmusic.com.
Yeah.
And which is how I discovered you from your website, and I think you have something like close to 10,000 people in your database there. So it's really quite an empire, I think. So how did you get started? Tell us a little bit about your background and how you got involved in actually just music licensing in general.
So I attended Berklee College of Music as a songwriting major in the 90s, and I first heard about music licensing when I was at Berklee. I had a songwriting teacher who had her own publishing company at the time, and she would talk about projects that she was working on in class from time to time. So I was sort of exposed to this idea of music licensing at Berklee. But at the time, I was 18, 19, 20 when I was at Berklee, and I was very young and sort of naive about the music business and sort of unclear about what I wanted to do. I mean, I knew what I wanted to do, but I was very sort of unclear about how to go about doing that. I really wanted to play in a band and tour and do this sort of thing. So I sort of forgot about licensing after Berklee. I left Berklee and I went to Chicago, where I'm from, and I formed a band. That was sort of my goal all along, was to write music and be in a band. So I did that. I formed a band. We were together for about 3.5 years in the Chicago area. We toured around the Midwest. We were starting to do pretty well. We were starting to get some pretty big shows, like headlining clubs in Chicago, and starting to play for some pretty decent size crowds. And after about 3.5 years, we broke up, and it all kind of happened very quickly. But our singer left and moved to he went to LA, then eventually went to Nashville. And then our drummer quit a few months later. And so really within the course of about 2 or 3 months, the entire band just fell apart. And I was probably 22 or 23 at the time. And I remember feeling really discouraged because I had invested so much energy and passion into this project, into playing in this band. And I remember feeling like sort of like overnight this whole dream of mine collapsed. And there was really nothing I could do about it. I could go try and reform a new band and find 3 or 4 more guys to kind of hitch my wagon to. But it was at that point that I really wanted to find something different and to find something that I wasn't so dependent on other people for. So that's when I sort of revisited this idea of music licensing. I connected with my former teacher at Berklee, started sending her tracks, and over the course of the next 6 months or so, started licensing my own tracks and started getting an idea of what worked in the context of licensing. Like at that time, she was working my teacher, who became my publisher, was working on a lot of soap operas and shows like ER, Navy NCIS, One Life to Live, The Young and the Restless. And so I started sending her music. And at first, I sent her 3 or 4 tracks. She found one that she liked, and I was able to sort of hone in on what worked. And then over the next couple of years, started licensing more and more music. And that's really how I got started.
Great. So the Berklee connection really helped then, huh?
It did. It definitely did. And it's funny because I tell this story often and people say, well, you just were able to do this because you went to Berklee and you knew this teacher, this connection of yours. But the funny thing was, I thought she remembered me all along, and we would have these email exchanges. And then maybe after 6 months or so of working together, she sent me an email, and she's like, by the way, how did you find out about me? And I'm like, it's Aaron. It's like from your class. I just assumed.
Well, that's so cool that you told me that, because this whole time, because I've heard, different interviews and podcasts, and you've mentioned this a few times. And even when you told me, like right now, this is the first time that you've ever told me this side of the story.
Yeah.
So that's fascinating. So basically just on the strength of your music alone. So this whole time I thought, hey, you're like, hey, buddy, hey, can you help me out? Sure, I'll help you out. Hey, we were at Berklee. Let's do it,
Yeah.
So that's actually very cool.
Yeah, and I think I probably did mention early on that I was one of her former students, but I don't think she really remembered me. So, yeah, I do. The point of the story, I think, is that you really don't. It really is about the music, and it certainly helps if you have a personal relationship, but I don't think it's absolutely a prerequisite.
Yeah, that's totally true to me. Like it's about the music.
Yeah.
All right. So, like, why did you start? howtolicenseyourmusic.com. How did that come about? That concept?
Yeah, so I started licensing my own music in 2002, and at the time I was working as a guitar teacher in Chicago, and all along I continued to teach, and I would license more and more tracks, and I would go into to work, to where I taught, and I would be sort of proudly talking about, last night my music was on One Life to Live, or yesterday my music was on The Young and the Restless, just kind of sharing stories with my coworkers. And what I realized is I was working with all these musicians, and none of them really had a clue about this licensing thing. And again, this is 2005, 2006, around this time at this point. Yeah. So nobody, it was like all of these musician friends were sitting on these original songs. They didn't really know how to make money with them. And so it seemed like I had discovered this sort of cool niche, in the music industry that musicians wanted to know about. So in 2007, I decided that I wanted to do something other than just giving guitar lessons. I'd been doing this for so long. I was making money from music licensing. I was making a nice part-time income, but it wasn't quite enough to live on full-time. So I decided to create this website, my website, howtolicenseyourmusic.com. And I really think, and I'm not 100% sure of this, but I really think, to the best of my knowledge, I was the first person to create a website teaching musicians how to license music. And now there's a lot of people kind of in this space giving courses, and right. That I'm sort of competing against now, which is funny. But I'm pretty sure I was a pioneer in this industry,
wow.
Gary.
Well, yeah. I mean, when I found out about you, I think that's absolutely true. Yeah.
Yeah. So. But that's how and why I started the website. I wanted to create a forum to teach other musicians about licensing. And I wanted to create a forum that was accessible and attainable to anybody. I feel very fortunate that I was able to go to Berklee and forge these great connections and relationships. But Berklee is a very expensive school. It's not something that is within reach of many musicians. Perhaps the majority of musicians can't really afford or don't have the opportunity to get this sort of education. So I wanted to create something online that was accessible to just, your average Joe musician.
Great.
So that's why I created the website.
Very cool. Yeah, and speaking about someone who doesn't have access to something like that, what advice would you give to like someone who's like starting out right now? They want to start licensing their music. How do they get started?
So that is the sort of $64 million question, or whatever the dollar amount is. Yeah, I don't know that there's one way to get started. I think the word that comes to mind, sort of the concept, is networking. And I really do think at the end of the day, music licensing isn't the sort of thing. It's not like a job where you look in the classifieds for this position and you interview and then you're hired and then you have this job doing music licensing. It doesn't really work that way. Instead, what it really is it's connecting with people that license music. And if you're doing this on a freelance basis, which most of us are, it's connecting with a lot of people. So I think a good way to get started, and again, I'm going to talk about, my course is called the 90-Day Music Licensing Challenge. And right. I think it's a great format. It provides a really good structure for licensing music. But even if you don't take this course, I think the same sort of principle applies, which is you want to network on a regular basis, because I think what a lot of musicians do is let's say they spend $10,000 to record a CD and they write these songs and they're really excited about these songs. The album's done. They get their, masters back from their producer, and then they send it to a few places over the course of the next year or so. They play some gigs, and a year or two later, they're sort of disappointed and surprised when not much happens, right? So I think a part of this is just networking is a part of the job of music licensing. The songwriting, the production is obviously a big part of it. But, part of the job is just getting your music out there to people. So this is sort of a long-winded way of saying, I think if nothing else, connect with people in the industry every day. Listen to TV shows, find out who uses music that's sort of similar to what you're doing stylistically. Look for companies that license those songs and work with those TV shows and send your music. And it really is as simple as that, but it's also something you need to be very strategic and deliberate about.
Very cool. Yeah. And what about in terms of the music itself? Can you talk about what the requirements are in terms of songwriting and production?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's sort of a big topic. Let's start with production first, because songwriting is a little more subjective and it's a little harder to sort of pin down what works songwriting wise, but production wise. And you and I have talked about this. We talked about this in the podcast we did a couple of weeks ago. There's sort of a wide range of licensing opportunities. I mean, this is sort of the cool thing about licensing is that it's not a one size fits all thing. There's a lot of different opportunities to license music. From cable TV shows, of music that's used in the background on cable television shows, all the way up to primetime network shows to feature films. And so in terms of production quality, depending on the placement and depending on where your music is used, the requirements are going to be different. But in general, sort of a rule of thumb is that the production quality is, this, Gary, is really, really critical. And I think if there's one thing that holds musicians back, it's production quality, because there's a lot of good writers out there that have good songs, but if they're not produced up to speed, this, if a supervisor pops in a demo and the production isn't there, they'll press stop before they even listen to the track. So I think first and foremost, that's really, really important. In terms of songwriting, there's a wide range of styles of music that are used. I guess I can give you sort of some generalizations, which is, if you think about the context of licensing and why and how songs are used, it's generally not the entire track. So it's maybe a 30-second snippet or a 60-second snippet. So an idea that my publisher has talked to me a lot about over the years is the idea of kind of getting to the point fairly quickly in songs that are used for licensing. You don't want things like long, drawn-out intros or super long verses or songs that take a long time to develop. Hooks, having like a really strong hook is really, really important, because your song needs to kind of grab the attention of the listener pretty quickly. You know, you don't have a lot of time to work with. So those are sort of some general guidelines. There's obviously a lot more to it than that, but those are some general things to think about.
Excellent. Excellent. And what kind of licensing credits have your clients attributed to like taking your courses and working with you? Like where have your clients' music been heard?
That's a good question, Gary. And I actually pulled up, you know, it's funny because I get emails from time to time and I save them in a folder. And so I'm going to list you off some of the credits that I've been told about. And I'm sure there's probably a lot more because not everybody emails me, I'm pretty sure, you know, after they take one of my courses and have success. You know, sometimes you might take a course and then 6 months later something happens. And I don't know that I always get notified. But I was going through emails this morning, and so here are some of the networks and shows that my clients have credited my courses and coaching with. A&E, MTV, Hyundai, the show Grey's Anatomy, a Target commercial, so the brand Target, Hollywood Hillbillies is a TV show, I believe. The feature film Movie 43, Showtime Network, Discovery Channel, Nickelodeon, Fuse TV, the Oxygen Network, Spike TV, VH1, the show Degrassi, the show Descending, which I believe is a Canadian show, the film Living Will, Hollywood Heights. One of my clients had music in a Heineken ad, another in a PlayStation ad, and the show The Young and the Restless. And those are just the ones I found this morning. So I'm sure there's probably more, but
yeah,
pretty nice long list of credits. And it's funny because, you know, this is obviously a business, and my running this website and doing these courses, I do to make money, but I also like really fundamentally, first and foremost, I do it because I love it and I really love working with musicians. So it's really gratifying to get emails like that of someone who said, you know, I took your course and it worked, and you know, because of the information I'm sharing, they've gone on to license their music. So that's pretty cool.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I should probably update your list because I'll get from time to time, since we do our courses together.
Yeah.
I have my file. I know I try to send them to you once in a while, but they've been stacking up a little bit. I should send them to you so you can add to that. Because, like, for instance, I'll just give you an example. One of my students, which came through howtolicenseyourmusic.com, and he took both courses, you know, how to produce music that will get licensed and make you money.
Yeah.
And he took the Mysteries of Mastering Solved course, and he did your 90-day challenge. And he's been an ongoing student because I do these Skype lessons. Yeah. Well, he just landed a job as the composer for A&E for season 2 of Born This Way. And he in his last lesson, he wanted me to give you a shout out and tell you thank you.
Oh,
so
nice.
I'll take this opportunity.
Talking about Eddie, right?
Yeah, Eddie Gray.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah,
And
that's
he's
really
just
cool.
on fire. And he said the whole thing was when he hooked up with us and, you know, through our courses and through your 90-day challenge. And he attributes that totally to his success. So, and that's just one example.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no, it's really cool. There's been a lot of those over the years. There was, last year I did a podcast with a guy named Paul Glover. And it's funny because Paul originally contacted me in probably 2009 or 2010. I don't remember exactly, but he sent me some music. And at the time it wasn't that good. I mean, to be like, the production just wasn't there. And I don't remember exactly. It's been so long that I don't even really remember exactly what my advice was to him, but he took my courses. We did some coaching together. He got in touch with me last year, so in 2015, you know, 5 years later. And he sent me his website, and he on his website had a list of all the places his music had been used, and it was in like over 200 TV shows.
Wow!
And so I'm like, Paul, I got to have you on the podcast because I want to hear how you were able to do this. And so I interviewed him, and he just said, you know, I worked with you, and I think he said like the first year he dedicated to production, because I think one of the things I told him was that, yeah, like your production just isn't good enough, you know, and sometimes it's just not there. And so he spent a year, he said, like really getting his production up to speed. He said he spent the second year really just networking, kind of you know, because you kind of have to do this in stages if you're not ready. And so He spent the second year networking, and he said it was at the end of the second year that he got like 1 or 2 placements. It was very slow. It was very gradual.
Wow.
Then by the third year, it started, he got more and more. And then by the fourth year, it really picked up. And now 5 years into this, he's in hundreds of shows and making, nice revenue stream from this. So I thought that was a really good illustration of sort of the process that's involved in doing this really successfully.
Yeah, I heard that interview. It was excellent.
Yeah.
And I think that shows that it's not an instant gratification industry at all. It really, and that's the message I get from you. And as I've said before, your messages have been so inspiring to me because since it's not instant gratification, it takes hard work and time. You've got to stay up and you got to have thick skin. You'll get rejections at first. You're not like you're not going to an office with 10 or 20 or 100 other people that are kind of like, cheering you on. Sometimes you're just there alone, and you've become to me like this beacon of inspiration to be that source point that keeps people going, both with your information, but also with your spirit and your energy and your message. So that's how, I did the 90-day music challenge. That's how I got started, in licensing. I had been a producer for years, so I had that part down, but I had no clue what to do. And you just totally guided me right through this whole thing, and then we started working together.
Yeah. Well, I think that's true. And I think it's because first and foremost, I'm a musician, right? And so I started this sort of from the perspective of being a musician, of being a singer-songwriter, and really pursuing this myself because I had some success early on. But at the end of the day, I'm just, I'm trying to kind of be successful in this industry like everybody else. So, and it's funny because I brought you up in a podcast that I did recently. I talked about you because, I get so busy with this website and working with other clients that I was starting to kind of experience a lull in my own licensing success over the last year or so. And we connect, like a couple months ago, I was talking to you and you were like telling me about all these projects you were working on and all these supervisors because you're out in LA that you were connecting with. And so during that conversation, we were able to, I kind of said, hey, I'd love to get involved in this particular project for this show. On can I talk about this on A&E?
Yeah.
So that was really interesting to me because this really is an ongoing thing. And so, back to networking, you've been sort of a great person in my network, really a key person that you've really helped me over the last couple of years, in terms of producing my own music and now helping me get my music licensed through your contacts. So I really value our relationship and friendship.
Yeah, thank you. And that's such a, isn't that cool? Like you're the one that taught me and got me going, and then you're so busy with your thing. I'm going like, hey, Aaron, send me some stuff. Let's produce some stuff. Let's get your stuff going too. And so it feels so good for me to be able to turn around and help you now as well. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I think we're all in this thing together, So I think a big part of this is just forming and forging these sort of mutually beneficial relationships. And I feel like you and I are a good example, of what's possible.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So, and speaking of that 90-day music challenge, the music licensing challenge, which is how I got started, it's how Eddie got started. All my students that are successful right now, all of them, 100% of them did the 90-day music licensing challenge. So can you tell us about how the program works and like what writers can expect by participating in that?
Absolutely. So this is how the program works. It's obviously 90 days long. It's a 90 consecutive day long program. So for 90 consecutive days, when you enroll, you get coaching. So one-on-one coaching with me. At the beginning of the program, I sit down with everybody on Skype. I don't actually sit down face to face. That would be just not practical. But I sit down on Skype with everybody, and for a half hour we sort of go over where everybody is in terms of their own career, if they've licensed music at all, or if they're totally new to this. We sort of come up with a game plan for the next 90 days, what they need to do, what they need to focus on. And then for 90 days, there's one of the key things is a different licensing lead every single day for 90 consecutive days. And I think this is really key because I think if anything else, the sort of structure and format that this course provides is really beneficial, because I think so many musicians are just not quite sure what to do. They kind of know how licensing works. Like, I think intellectually they get the concept of licensing music, what that means, but they're not quite sure where to turn to, or, you know, how to get started. So for 90 days, there's a different lead of a specific company that musicians can submit their music to. They're all vetted. I've checked them all out. They're all 100% open to hearing music. So that's number one. Number two, there's in-depth training throughout the program. There's a members area that musicians can log into, and they're going to learn everything they need to know about music licensing, what kind of files they need, how to approach publishers versus supervisors, how contracts work, how co-writing works, and on and on and on. So a lot of training. And then a ton of in-depth interviews. I think there's like 15 hours of really in-depth, good, you know, audio interviews that I've done with people over the last couple of years. People like you, but publishers, supervisors, producers, people working in the industry. So those are sort of the key components to the course. And then you're actually giving away an incredible bonus package. So why don't you tell them what you're including if they sign up for the 90-day challenge?
Sure. And I'm doing this just really as a show from my appreciation to you. You know, just I want people to know that. And what I'm doing is, so if somebody signs up for the 90-day music licensing challenge, the first thing I'm going to do is I'll master one of their songs. And in that process, by the way, I'm going to give them a written critique. And often what happens is, if the track they send me to master is good, I'll master it then. And they'll have this mastered thing. But sometimes there's adjustments needed. And I work with them on making those adjustments. I tell them exactly what adjustments to make and how. So it's a real involved process they learn from just getting their song mastered.
Yeah.
So that's the licensing, the mastering they'll get with a critique. And then in addition to that, what I'll do is I'll give them a half-hour Skype consultation. And I know you do the same thing. It's like oftentimes it goes more than a half hour. You get into it so much, you know what I mean? You're like, you know, and they're going, hey, you sure you can keep going? And I mean, that's the thing I appreciated about you when you did that for me the first time. I was watching the clock, and you're like, no, I want to actually finish this thought. And so it's not just like, okay, bye, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's very service-oriented from both of us, which is, I appreciate that. And that's the most important thing to me, is that to be able to give these bonuses to help you with this 90-day music licensing challenge so that the person who's doing the challenge will succeed. That's the whole point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know about you, Gary, but I really have fun doing the consultations, because for me, like, so much of this work, running my website and working on the internet, is very solitary work. I mean, I love the fact that I'm able to do it, but the most fun that I have is actually connecting. Like, I love doing things like this, the podcast, anything sort of involving connecting with other actual people. I love that. So I have a lot of fun with the coaching.
Yeah, I totally relate to that. It's like it's one of the things I look forward to the most, actually. And it's, you know, with Skype, it's, you know, amazing because you're anywhere in the world, you know, in a moment, and that's fun to hook up with people from different cultures. And for me also, you know, I have the book which I update every year, you know, the Home Studio Bible.
Yeah.
And it's invaluable. I love talking to people to find out what's working for them, what they're running into, and to try to help them through any barriers as well.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So how would you, I mean, I think we've covered all the points that we had planned to, but I have a question for you, which is
let me real quick, Gary, let me mention one more thing, because there's actually
good.
3 more bonuses that I forgot to mention. So, and by the way, I want to make this really clear, because originally I had a deadline, like you had to sign up by May 29th and you would get this bonus package, and you were kind enough to extend your bonuses. And I decided to do the same thing, because I really want everybody to have an opportunity to get everything. I really want to make the offer as enticing as possible. But someone wrote me, I think it was yesterday or the other day, but they were like mad that I extended this deadline. They're like, I signed up for this and I made sure I signed up on time, and now you're giving it to everybody. And they were like mad at me. So if you're watching this and you're one of those people, write me and I will hook you up. I will send you extra bonuses. But I really wanted to make this offer sort of a no-brainer and provide a ton of value and a ton of content. So the three additional courses that we're offering, the 2 courses we created together, Gary. So Mysteries of Mastering Solved, which is a 2 or 2.5 hour long audio and video course all about the topic of mastering, specifically for music licensing. We also did a similar course on music production that's called How to Produce Music That Will Get Licensed and Make You Money. That's all about music production as it relates to licensing music. So those 2 courses you'll get when you sign up for this. Those normally sell for $47 each. They're yours free of charge. And then finally, there's a third course called How to Make Money with Stock Music Libraries. That's another audio and video course that I created with a composer in Canada. So anyways, that's the bonus package. I could go on and on about how valuable this is, but it's a really good package that truly is worth more than the cost of the program.
Totally. Like I said, all my students that are actually licensing music right now have done the 90-day music licensing challenge. So it's, and it's how I got started. So I just loving the fact that you continue this service. It's just so invaluable.
Well, I'm happy to do it. And so I think that's it. I think we covered, pretty much everything we want to cover. I will put a link. Originally, we were going to do a live webinar, but we decided to pre-record this. We ran into some technical issues at the last minute. So I'll put a link below this video to sign up for the 90-day music licensing challenge. It starts today is Saturday, June 4th. It starts on Monday, June 6th. So depending on when you watch this, if it's on Sunday or even Monday, we'll leave the registration form open until Monday, June 6th. So sign up if you're interested in working with Gary and I. And I think that's it. Gary, thanks for being the host today. Appreciate this.
Yeah, it was fun. And again, thank you so much for all your help, Aaron. It's really it's made a huge difference. I helped get other people's music licensed for years, and now I'm actually getting my own music licensed, and we're getting our stuff licensed. So it's really I just want to say thank you.
No, thank you. It's been a great collaboration, and I hope we continue this for many years to come.
Absolutely. All right, man. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Have a great day.
You too.